My healthy woman app just says, hey, it's okay.
It says the meeting is
It's
being
very
live streamed.
encouraging.
Just saying.
It's being live streamed. Since.
It
Yeah,
is.
looks
It's
good.
mine says it's still setting it up, but
Oh,
you know,
Every
Very
3
happy.
hours I get
I think we should be good to go.
up.
Oh, yeah, here we are.
Every 3 hours.
Oh, except for I don't like that I can see my face so clearly here.
My friend said it will click in to whatever I'm doing.
Trade self-view. Perfect.
ready?
Yes.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the Town of Camden Select Board Workshop on September 27th, 2022. The agenda, as you can see, has two. Well, first of all, this workshop is being both live streamed on YouTube, and it's also on a Zoom webinar. That Zoom webinar link can be found on the Town of Camden website, Select Board, under Select Board packets for this date, and on the agenda is the link. With that, we will go into our agenda, which includes two items. The first is which is the discussion regarding the draft bylaws that you've all received. Just as a thank Audra, we did a lot of work on this. Just a little short background. Over last year, including this one, the select board has voted to approve a rules and responsibilities document that we actually have approved of the five of us this year. There's always a comment about it being too light, not covering enough, a little too pedantic perhaps. So that's the intent of this bylaws. And within the bylaws are a host of different items intending to address some of the more common issues we've come up with as a board, as acting as a board, including roles and responsibilities of the board versus town manager in the town. Then you've read it, there's some others in that regard. In addition, it's an attempt to clarify or otherwise discuss some of the elements of our select board meetings, including their cross-section intent, inclusions, exclusions, and that kind of thing. So I don't want to get into that detail, but that's the backdrop of why this document was created. So you can see there are sections on this document that have everything from very trivial items to something a little bit more complex, intended for discussion. Nobody's dictating here, as you well know. So with that, I'm going to close my mouth and open it up to discussion from you all, having read these, on any comments on any particular items. Doesn't have to be in order, but and then at the end of the discussion on the draft bylaws, we'll make any comments or changes and bring it to a select board for approval, a separate meeting. And we'll have a couple of discussions on some ideas that weren't put in here, but we might want to discuss it at this time. But I'd like to hear any comments from anybody on the select board regarding any specific item. Yeah, it doesn't have to be in order. Any inclusion, exclusion, wording, questions.
So I
We'll say, go ahead, Sophie. A little bit closer, Sophie.
so I reviewed these and I made a few comments, and I'm happy to go through my comments because some of them are more questions and
Sure,
things that are open
Sure.
for discussion,
sure.
just to kick us off, but I'm also.
No, please do.
All right, so section 2, officers and duties
Yes,
on page 1.
yes.
We're saying that officers of the board shall consist of a chairperson, vice chair, to be chosen on or after the annual town meeting. But I propose we change that to the after the election, right? 'Cause
Yeah,
Town meeting is elected, isn't
is it considered the,
it is, but I mean, I think
we
have
can,
it layman's.
Right.
That's fine with me. That's fine. Yeah, I get confused by that all the time.
Yeah.
we do.
And the public does too, about
Yeah,
open town meeting, secret ballot meeting after the June election.
Okay, so we can reword that.
Are you going to take notes of this, Audra?
It's
Did we agree?
already,
yes, I'll,
okay.
Okay, go ahead, Sophie.
do we want to do like does anybody have any objections to that?
Or do we want to
Swapping out
vote?
town-
No, you don't, no, we're not going to
Meeting.
vote on anything here. We're just going to have consensus, because this has to come to a select board.
Okay,
Any other comments in this paragraph or suggestions? The way to do it is if you disagree with something I say or Sophie or Brett or Tom says, we'll just say it, that's fine.
How should it be worded? What do you?
It should read the annual June election.
Yeah.
That's simplest, I think.
Mhm.
Go ahead, Sophie.
So my next one is on the following page, section 3, meetings,
Three. Yes,
and it's alinea B.
B.
And I propose, oh, so this is something. The select board meeting is not a public hearing in itself. It's a meeting of the select board in the public.
It's a duly published meeting to the public of the select board with a quorum.
Right.
Yes.
So I think we made the change.
Duly published, huh?
Yeah.
Well, it has to, that's what it says, the notice required by law.
Oh, I'm not saying it should.
No.
Although public, the select board meeting in itself is not a public hearing.
Public
But it's
hearings
a
are held
duly
within a select.
published
It's a public meeting, but not a public hearing.
hearing,
Correct.
Right.
Unless we call for public hearing in the select.
unless,
Right, and sometimes we do.
so you can disregard my comment. It's
Thank you.
been clarified.
I like those.
Maybe it's like, it should direct people to where a public hearing is described.
Yeah, like what is the difference between the public
Like,
hearing
right,
and the
like a
public
footnote.
meeting?
With
Yeah.
a footnote that.
Yeah, like
Goes
see,
to the statute or
see
whatever.
blah, 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 for like,
I do that under B.
Oops.
yeah, and maybe, I mean, I'm just throwing that in there, it might not,
Doesn't matter.
but it is confused, because it's,
It is.
It's confusing because the rules are not the same.
and people don't really know what,
They're not the same. There's more notice given for a public hearing. Keep going, Sophie.
Allison was talking.
I didn't think so.
I mean, I mean, it's like, is this document for us? Is it meant for somebody to be able to read through from the public and understand what they can expect from us? Or
Its focus is for us.
its focus is for us?
Principally for us, just like rules and responsibilities was, but it's a public document.
So I guess I would, in some way, it would be good to have it say, a public hearing is, this,
A separate.
Yeah.
right? Because
If you want to
What's the
clarify, that's
legal-
fine. That's fine.
because we hold different things, we hold
That's-
meetings, we
that's
hold
fine.
public hearings.
We hold public
Well,
meetings.
it's rare that the select board holds only a public hearing. Public hearings are always part of the select board meeting.
I mean, because then C and D
Unless we have a
says special
special-
meetings,
Oh,
so are we
sure.
gonna give a description of the special meetings?
We probably should, maybe we should have a glossary,
We should have an annex.
Could do that.
because what are special meetings and not regularly scheduled?
Anything
They're
is
not
not
regularly
scheduled.
scheduled.
That's
Regular
what I
schedule
found
per
when
charter is
we
the first
started.
to third Tuesdays of the month.
Our charter says that?
Oh, yeah. It's very,
Yeah.
very, yeah, absolutely. Special meetings are also called out in the charter. So I don't know how many places you want to define this, but I think you gotta be a little
I don't
careful.
think the charter says what our select board meetings are. It says when our
I believe it does.
elections and things are, but I don't
No,
believe
I
it says.
I believe it
does.
does. I believe it does. But irrespective, it doesn't, if you want to mimic something, or again, the focus of the audience, this was intended document to be consumed by us as select board and future select boards should they decide to choose it.
So if it's clear to everybody on the select board, I mean, my question has been clarified.
Okay,
My question has been clarified. So if it's,
Alright.
if the language is clear to everyone, then we don't need to change anything.
all right, yeah, that's
Maybe we
correct.
go through everything and then at the end we decide, was there a need for
That's good. idea.
this or not? I think if anything, it's just
That's good.
illuminated that it's not clear to any of us.
That's really the key. Thank you.
Well,
Any other
hearings
comments,
is
Sophie?
Right, yeah, so maybe we'll be clearer.
Okay, so my next one is on page 4,
Or
section, alinea C,
say what?
paragraph C.
Under
So
under hearings?
4C?
Page
4C, page 4, I'm
I
sorry.
don't
The
know.
section is section 5, participation and voting.
5C.
It starts
Oh.
on page 3, but the.
Okay, yeah.
So I'm looking at paragraph C. No member shall participate or vote in any adjudicatory proceeding,
Yeah,
including proceedings on license, permits, or other approvals, unless the member was present during all hearings thereon.
correct.
And I find this a bit I understand the purpose, but for new board members, it can make it difficult for them to, or actually, it prohibits new board members from voting on some issues because it might not have been.
You're missing the intent, and maybe it's not clear. The intent here is an adjudicatory proceeding would be reviewing a liquor license. So
Okay,
liquor license has a hearing during the meeting,
okay,
which you must be in attendance for. You can't walk in late after that hearing is held and vote on the license because you're a judge.
Okay.
You have to hear all the testimony.
so it's the only occasion, there wouldn't be like topics we would,
Every-
our adjudicatory processes, we would start at different. Board
There's
meetings?
several where the board has a quasi judicial role, like is a quasi judicial body.
Yeah.
So liquor licenses is one of them, you know, the section of the
Peers.
harbor ordinance, yeah, exactly. Where the select board has to hold a hearing on that and be
Yep.
fact finders.
Yep.
So any process when there's like a findings of fact, you're a quasi judicial board, and so that would apply to those.
Right.
But it doesn't apply to, the select board doesn't have a public hearing Wednesday and then change the select board and vote on something. That's not the way it works. The public hearing's purpose is to get public input on an issue and then the board votes on it.
Okay,
So the only time we have a public hearing that I've ever seen, I can't think of an example that doesn't, is in an official select board meeting in which we attend.
but so when we started talking about the peer moratorium in March, before Stephanie and Tom were elected, and then we came back
That
to
was not
approve.
a public hearing.
Well, there are times when public hearings are
I'm
So
continued.
let's not confuse the public hearing thing from
The adjudication process.
adjudicatory hearings.
Correct.
Right.
So for example, if, say, we had the hearings where there was all of the questions that needed to be asked and you went through the fact finding process on the peers, but you didn't vote on your
Right.
findings of fact.
Right.
And say Tom and Stephanie, their tenure on the board started the next meeting and the rest of you returned to that and are like, okay,
Right.
we're going to approve these, or we're gonna pass a resolve with these findings of fact. They couldn't vote on it then. However, the conversation around the moratorium, because that's a policy discussion,
I see.
policy, they could vote on that.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay,
So I think it's a lot of words, but basically means you can't walk in after the public hearing and vote on something because you were late.
okay,
Because you were late, I don't think that's what it's saying. I mean, the very wording of it suggests that
if you didn't.
there
participate.
were, if you were not present during all hearings thereon, so that suggests multiple hearings. That's not,
Right,
you can't vote if you arrived late.
When have we had stuff for multiple years?
Well, then if you're saying that doesn't happen, then you shouldn't be
then why do we have it?
defending this whole, I mean, what's the
I'm not
matter?
defending, I just didn't take it out. I think it's.
Your argument would be then that it's, this whole thing's unnecessary.
Right.
But maybe if we can get to the heart of what Audra's, like, what do we want to prevent here? It's what you said,
Right, it's just making everybody aware that when you're in your role as sort of a quasi judicial board where you're fact finders, you need to be present for the information gathering part of that
Yeah, I can
process.
go either way. I think it means.
okay,
It's fact.
Okay.
Next,
that's it,
that's it.
yeah.
Stephanie, any comments, posts, concerns, additions, deletions, capitalizations, Diane? All right,
so D on that,
D on
page
that one.
4. Yeah, for that,
Can we go by section, just easier?
sorry, just the one just immediately after.
All members who are present, not qualified, therein shall vote in every matter to be
5D.
voted upon. Yeah.
Okay.
5D, yeah.
5D,
Is that your special edition?
No. I
No.
didn't-
section 5D.
So that's basically, you can't abstain.
You can go present,
Well, if you.
Like, you basically have to say, I have a conflict of interest, or I think I might be biased, I have to go through the chair just to.
You can abstain, but it's a real gray area. And it's a gray area where you're abstaining because I completely don't understand this at all. I don't understand math, and I'm sorry, voting on this would be, yes, the chair could say, well, you should vote, but why would you? If you can abstain if you really truly don't understand the topic at hand.
I've seen this at school board meetings before,
Have
and a little bit where there was a question about, and maybe even here, this idea, you can't abstain unless you have a,
It's not-
declared conflict of interest, like you can't abstain just because you can't decide.
Yeah, but
I don't know that I want-
we've had that happen, to be honest with you, and I've allowed the abstention, and technically you should. You are correct, it's a gray zone, but technically it is the chair's decision to say, yeah, no, I'm sorry, your abstention, you don't have cause for it. You could say the same thing about conflict of interest.
Mhm.
The board might say, yeah, Allison, you think you have a conflict of interest? I don't agree. And if two others don't agree,
Right, at times when, right, there's a little bit of a formatting issue here also.
Yeah,
Oh,
there's a double space there.
That's, yeah,
okay.
line spacing.
Anything else?
No, not on that.
Well, other comments that was definitely bypassed, so I was going to you.
I think Sophie was running
And
down.
I've
did.
run down all
She
my
did.
comments.
She did. We're going to skip this one when you're thinking.
Sure, yeah.
Tom,
I have
you want to
more.
make comments or any concerns?
Section 3.
Yeah. Which one?
Meetings, section 3,
Yeah.
item H. The agenda is developed by the select board chair and town manager by Wednesday of the week prior to the meeting. The agenda will include input from the select board members. So how are we going to implement that?
I think we have a policy already that says if you have a request, you submit them to me and Audra by Tuesday of the preceding week.
I thought I saw
didn't
that's
see
kind of
that
like a
in here.
larger issue that I
We
wanted.
didn't have it in here, did we, Audra?
What's that?
Something about a select board
Schedule.
issues log. Did I see a
The
reference? to that
schedule's
somewhere?
not.
Yeah, at the very end, yeah.
We should
So-
put all this in there.
If you
Yeah,
have
actually, it's on that same one. That's
Right.
Right.
So, I'm sorry, I wasn't aware of that.
Oh, sorry, should have been, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
It's preferred by the end of the day on Tuesday, because we try to get to the agenda on
Okay.
Wednesday
Tuesday
of the preceding week,
of the preceding week.
please.
Now, the agenda will include input from select board members and select board issues log. Is that live?
It is on my book.
It
It
is.
can be at any.
It can be at any time.
Any moment.
That's different than it is.
It's sitting there waiting for you.
And then, 3I,
Three.
any board member may make a motion for adjustments to the agenda.
That's H.
That's I.
Sorry, mine's H.
Any board member may make a motion for adjustments to the agenda.
Mine says H.
So is that at the meeting? This is.
Yes, you can, you
Okay.
can.
And what would be the appropriate time to do that?
Anytime, Tom, even at the beginning of the meeting is preferred, but, for example, when I table an agenda item, I say with the board's approval, technically it's me looking for at least, supermajority has to be four of the board to approve deletion or an addition.
Okay, where is that?
Well, mine is H, I don't know where his I is coming
Yeah,
from.
it is clear Bob's
on-
working off a
on
different
file.
document. Did
Yeah.
you maybe, like, from the one that you sent out over email? Is this the one you got
How
on
about
email?
we just use the one that's in the packet? Instead of,
I looked at the packet online, all right. I didn't see the packet.
At the beginning of the meeting, Bob, we don't really actually take a moment to go down through the agenda. at the
No, we
beginning of
won't.
the meeting.
We've reviewed it. If you have a comment, you've already reviewed it. And then you looked at it and you come back and say, I'd like to add something about, I don't know.
Sidewalks.
Some sidewalks, yeah, on
Sure.
Pearl Street. But not an action of the discussion item perhaps. You can make, I'd like to move to add that to the agenda.
Okay,
And then there have to be a second. If there isn't, doesn't go anywhere. If there's a second, then I have to take a vote and it has to be 4 of the 5. The reason for that is it's 2/3 majority for certain things and 2/3 out of 5 people is 4, unfortunately, because 3 is only 60%.
sure.
Is this a Robert's Rules thing?
I think it goes above that. I think it goes beyond to state statute.
well, no, they don't specify how we have to run our meetings. So what you could do if you wanted to add, you could, under the section where we talk about the agenda, you could add in a section for agenda adjustments. There are other municipalities that
Well,
do
but they
that.
have to be voted on.
Right, but you just have that section where you just say, are there any proposed agenda adjustments?
Well, we
People
don't-
get to
I've had that in
propose them,
other
and then-
boards, yeah.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
very,
We can do that, we can do, but again, just have to bring it up anytime, actually, and just say, I'd like to move and vote, I'll leave it vote on it. That's it. Next question, I'll get to the right place.
Since we're on, do you mind if I say? my
No,
yeah,
opinion?
go ahead.
So for
Hmm,
transparency purposes, the bylaw should always contain a general outline of an agenda. So that, I remember that, select board reports for
Yeah,
years and years and years and years and years used to be at the beginning,
right,
and then they got put at the end.
Right.
What was your thinking on that?
for me, I thought that,
I think you need
principally.
to stay closer to your microphone.
Sorry. I consider that, this is a good question because it goes to the core of what a select board meeting is all about. And to me, it starts with executing the business of the town. That's why we usually have a front, consent agenda with action items, followed by anything discussion wise. And that fits in that category in my mind. It could come before discussion, it could come down to that area, but the core of the meeting is making motions and moving on action items. That the time is, that's this, just a simple order, which I've seen more often than not.
Would you like that?
I mean-
I always liked it better,
Well, yeah,
even
but-
as a select board member. I personally just enjoyed that part of it. Yes,
So, I can
I
understand. that.
learned some things about some, a few
Yeah.
things that I didn't
Right,
know about or sometimes didn't
Right.
come for. And
understood.
I see that there's a potential sometimes for it to become, too lengthy, and we shouldn't be, wearing ourselves out or anybody else out with long select board reports at the beginning, but I remember this is Mark's thing too.
But
We
you
both
got,
objected to that change.
you've got to make a decision again about what is the primary focus. One, of the select board meeting, and two, who is listening? Because, yeah, that's good for the individuals who want to hear that, but and from what I've seen, our select board meetings are not a communication channel. They don't work.
Well, they certainly aren't operating well as a communication channel.
No, I don't, to my tenure, board never has.
I think, well, yeah,
But if
I
we-
think we could argue until the cows come home about whether it makes it better or worse. I personally preferred
Mhm.
that coming at the
Mhm.
beginning of the
Mhm.
meeting. I think it created a little bit nicer, warmer perhaps environment for people sometimes. I think it can be overwhelming and feel very like cold. People come in here and they're like, whoa, who are these people? I think doing the reports at the beginning just allowed a little bit more connection. It was a little bit nicer environment.
I think when
It's
we
something
get
that the
to,
town had done for a very long
this,
time.
this falls on the topic of what is select board reports? Because from my past experience, it was reporting on our work with committees to report to the rest of the board. It's morphed into say anything about anything you want. So put some structure on it and maybe it brings more of a priority in the meeting. Otherwise, it's just to our individual discussions, talk about a problem I saw on a street or somebody said something to me that I think I should repeat in public. It's too amorphous.
Well, I think that there is like that little bit of wiggle room that you do get when you're elected to the select board. And if it were turning into a thing where all of us were coming in here and relating every single Friday night conversation we had, and it took an hour, then yeah, I think we would all kind of like reel each other back in and say, this is getting out of control. But I don't really think it's getting out of control. And if, once in a while, Stephanie wants to tell us what she saw on Hosmer Pond Road, and she chooses that as the most important thing to say, I think whatever, I just think the
Well, if we
benefits
do-
outweigh the,
If we bring it up, it's just amorphous, and when I go to plan meetings, I put time on, and I strongly disagree with putting that up front because of the fact it's so amorphous. It's just, is this not a select board town business meeting or not? That's the fundamental decision you have to make. Is that the primary focus of it, or is it a communications tool also?
I think it's also a communications tool.
I think it can be, I don't think it has been. I haven't seen more than 80 people on YouTube and nobody on on Zoom, other than maybe one or two people who have something to say about it.
So they just
agenda
love it
issue.
the way it is, huh? Is that what you're saying, or?
I'm saying, I think there's a failure of communication with the town. I agree with that. I don't think the select board meetings is the methodology to achieve that.
Well, we have a fundamental disagreement and.
Very basic disagreement, a core disagreement. Other comments on it?
Bob, I want to talk about section 6D, please.
Up to 6B.
The board may reconsider any decision within 30 days if its original decision provided, however, the following. In that, so I know that when we,
Tom, which one is this?
section 6.
B?
D.
D, dog. Okay, oh yeah, sorry.
Six. Section 6D, page 5.
Right.
A member of the prevailing side of the vote brings forward the motion for the reconsideration. So one thing that we do at the end of meetings is we sign all those documents.
Yes.
Regardless of how we voted.
Correct.
So do we actually have an official log of who voted which way?
Yeah, the video.
Or the meeting minutes.
And okay, that, and those are official.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so I just wanted to make that
Oh,
point of
sure.
clarification there.
But the meeting minutes just list the end vote, right?
Well,
The meeting minutes just
if-
say
if-
5-0 or 3-2,
Well,
or they
they'll-
don't say.
Yeah, you're
how
right,
they-
Sophie. I think you're right.
well.
They'll say if there's,
3-2.
if two vote against it, I'll say the names of who voted against it.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
That does.
That's important if we're gonna implement that.
No, of course, of course.
And then I just have and it would be section 8,
8,
item B,
B,
appearance of conflict of interest.
yes.
I think there's a wide interpretation here.
Oh, yeah.
Is this whole thing is new, or this whole document's new?
Yes.
Okay. I think this one is, we ought to enumerate conflicts of interest if we're gonna go there, potential ones.
I get, that's a difficult one, Tom, because that's why, in the end of the day, if I say, I think I have a conflict of interest because I own a boat. You know, it's something to do with the water or something, the harbor or something. And I consider that I want to tell everybody that I feel I have perceived the conflict. You all can vote and say, I don't agree with it. You can overrule me because you don't see it. That's really the bottom line test, is if the board feels you have a conflict of interest. Now, if I say, I own the company at the time of suing, hey, I'm gonna say, I have a conflict of interest, and I doubt you're gonna disagree with that one. But in the gray zone, it's so fuzzy because more often than not, I wonder if I have a conflict of interest, and I wonder just to talk about it during the meeting and let you all decide whether you agree or not.
Here's one example, like, that we talked about at one point, it was with the Mullins proposal.
Oh,
Now I am a volunteer with a nonprofit organization that leases space, it's not my nonprofit organization, but the organization that I volunteer with leases space from him. And I think a couple of people said, well, shouldn't Allison recuse herself?
yeah.
And my position was that, the nonprofit organization that I volunteer with is paying him something that, didn't constitute a conflict of interest. Otherwise, you'd have the town riddled with conflicts of interest every time they volunteer for, wouldn't be able to close down anything for Rotary but we had a brief conversation
Mhm.
about it. And so it was like an opportunity for, if the whole board had said, no, I really think.
So I think I made a mistake in not putting that in there because I think that's worked really well in the past.
You know,
when-
I think I agree.
I think, you know, all I've done here is sort of outline what could be considered a conflict of interest. But I think that the process around it in the past has been if somebody thinks that they have a real conflict of interest or a perceived conflict of interest, they'll state it to the board and then the board will vote on whether or not they also
Yep.
agree.
Yep.
So it's not up to that one individual to make that determination by the entire board.
Or somebody else from the board, we haven't had this really, but like somebody else from the
chooses us.
board,
It could.
somebody else could have said, no, Allison, I,
They
you know, release space from so-and-so.
And then the board would decide again.
Right, you know, right, then we talk about it and,
The only challenge that all about worries me sometimes is the person who thinks they have, like, I have a conflict of interest and 4 of you are voting on it, it can't come to a tie. And that means it's dead in the water. So it's, don't worry about it. It's just, that's the intent. We could clarify with adding some words about that.
Audrey, does the town have a policy on this for, I mean,
No,
Well, how you not know, because this is all about how you govern yourselves. You know, we have like nepotism policies and, you know, stuff in our personnel policy about town staff. But when it comes to, you know, how you govern yourself in terms of things like conflict of
yeah,
interest
it's
or
ours.
other, yeah, it's for you all to create your rules around how you do
Yeah.
that, and that's why we're doing that.
could I see, I don't want, is it possible to see what the town does for employees, just out of curiosity? Like, you know, we're the leaders of this town,
Mhm. Yep, I can send you the personnel policy and
that would be great.
sections in there.
But I would support adding back how we resolve the conflict of interest
Yeah.
in the
yeah.
policy.
I think that's a good idea, Audra. Anything else,
Yeah.
Tom?
does it say the thing about what constitutes a financial? conflict?
doesn't.
Well, yeah, because in some cases, they'll say, you know, like a 10% ownership in,
Oh, it doesn't say that.
you know, because financial business interest or personal financial interest,
Yeah.
again,
Mm.
really
Yeah.
broad.
The whole issue is broad, unfortunately.
And so ultimately, all of these really like need a process for
And again, it should be,
determining.
it should be first determination of the board member to reveal that they consider they have a potential conflict of interest, or whatever you want to call it, perceived is the word. Because just because, let's say, Tom, I'm gonna pick on him for a minute, just say, Tom, I think you have, I could say, I think you have a perceived conflict of interest in this matter because blah, 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 blah. And then we still have to act upon it. You know, Tom says, no, for the following reasons, I disagree. And then we would vote on that to, you know, prevail or not prevail. It's every meeting I've ever been, anything to do with conflict of interest, it's fuzzy as heck. And I've been in ones where they said, you have more than 10% interest. Well, you know, if I have 5% interest, I should reveal it to the public. So, because that's what the MRSA, the state statute says, you will reveal anything that has a potential of coming back at you later on through an individual or a group to say, you know, conflict of interest. But if we can, I think we should clarify to the board will vote to decide by a majority of the remaining board members.
And the only other note that I have, and this was
Uh-huh.
not really an adjustment here, but establish the schedule and agendas of the board. This is a responsibility of the chair.
Yeah.
This is section
Two.
2B2, B3.
2B3, yep.
How far out do we project those? Personally, it'd be very helpful to me if I had almost a year in advance. I know, it's asking a lot, but I do,
Not
there's
asking
certain
a lot.
aspects of my schedule I do have to set.
Oh, you mean the
January.
agendas?
No,
No,
the
No, just the
usual
dates,
days.
just the
yeah.
dates.
Oh, yeah, oh, yeah. Well, board meetings are a year out. So we usually, whatever reason, Audra, correct me if I'm wrong, we do it January 1st to December 31st, as I recall. We don't do it with the fiscal year, the board meetings.
So setting the
The calendar.
Calendar.
Yeah.
We do a year in
Yeah.
advance.
Okay.
And during a board meeting, we will look at that and say, Tom says, or Bob says, I'm gonna be in France that week. Could we possibly change, or can I call them remotely? Fine, yeah, because we have that capability.
Yeah, I mean, just personally,
No,
that's
I-
important to me. to
No,
know
that,
well in
I
advance.
totally agree. The only
Okay.
surprises that can come are workshops obviously, but we schedule those. And two, the other one is a special town meeting. We have only had one audit that I recall in the last 5 years I've been involved, which was Siemens, the snowball. That's the only.
We had a few
Did we have
more.
another?
Yeah, we had one on moratorium
Yeah.
for moorings in Lincolnville. We
Yeah.
had one.
One on the
For-
peer moratorium.
Yeah, that's
With-
true.
Yeah, we also had one on the real term contract for the solar, Sagamore Farm solar site.
No, we voted on that.
We had a special meeting.
That was just an extension, but that was an
That was
extension.
before my time. Oh, whatever. There's been very few, but Tom, those are the only ones. But for the select board agendas, I still believe that the policy and or charter says the person's third Tuesdays of the month or whatever it is.
Oh,
That's
we're
what
talking
the
about select board, special select board meetings?
No,
Yeah.
regular select board meetings.
regular stuff. on it.
So we did change was it this summer? We changed the schedule a little bit.
Yeah, we did, and it backfired.
Yeah. So it would be nice if we could stick to.
I believe we should stick to it because especially now we have the remote capability. You know, Tom, all the way from Portugal, wherever the heck you were, called in for a few minutes and I was session. Yeah, and if you can't, you can't, but we have that capability now. So to the extent possible, once it's an act of God, we should stay with the first and third.
But so far, we only have it until the end of the year right now.
That's correct.
Right.
But
So
soon-
when do we set the
November,
20? Okay,
we'll have an agenda.
Great,
Just
thank you.
set
Yeah,
it down.
yeah, yeah.
cool.
Anything else now?
Nope, I think that covered all my notes.
Okay. Section 9,
9,
B,
9B,
1,
9B.
1B.
Section 9. Hold on.
Section 9,
Wow, section 9
1B.
is so long.
Section 9, 1B, which is
1B.
the select board, is the executive body,
Yeah.
blah, 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 blah.
Yeah,
What?
we should fix the
What?
nomenclature or the, because we shouldn't have, it's usually better when you don't have to have B and then 1 and then go back to,
What are you recommending?
like Roman numerals or something like
Oh.
that. I don't know.
Oh,
But my actual point was something different, or question. So understand that he or she should abide by, stand by, and carry out all board decisions once they are made.
where are you reading?
What are you reading? Yeah.
I have 9, said 9,
9A,
Nine, section
1B.
A.
Section 9B,
yeah.
1B.
I'll be
Got
ready.
it. Oh,
The
okay.
select board,
Yeah. Understood that he or she should abide by, stand by, and carry out all board decisions once they are made.
I don't have this.
Uh-huh.
You don't?
No. Oh, B.
I
Yeah,
know, I
what's your comment
I
about
had to
that?
do the
Bingo,
same
this
thing.
is bylaws bingo again.
So I can abide by and carry out
Mhm,
all board decisions once they're made, even if I didn't
mhm.
vote that way.
Right,
But stand by is something I'm not necessarily comfortable with.
It's like, oh,
Like, I still want to be able to have, like, I don't have to, if I'm in the minority, I still like to be able to state my case, but say, but then I'll say, well, the reason we're not picking up trash on Sundays is because the board made a decision, and I disagree with it, but.
standing by.
But I'm not gonna, I don't have to say, I don't then have to agree that we shouldn't pick up trash on Sundays. I just stand by, I don't know quite what I mean by that.
stand by.
I don't wanna,
Stand by to me, it's kind of redundant, to tell you the truth. It says should abide by and carry out. You don't have to agree, but you shouldn't go purposely to go around and say, I voted against it, therefore, No, the board makes a decision, the decision's been made by the majority, and that is the board decision. Your individual decision has no meaning in the process of the select board.
yes, but that doesn't mean that I can't
Right.
disagree with it
Right.
and share even information with other people who might disagree with it to let them know if you are interested in trying to overturn that decision, you could start a petition, or you could.
I think you're making a lot of work out of being on the select board.
Well, it is a lot of work.
I know, but now you're opening up a petition because one
That's an
person on the board
example.
doesn't agree with the select board site.
I think, Allison does have a point, stand by. Let's say somebody asked me a question and I can say, well, Yeah, I didn't vote for it, but the board decided that way.
That's fine.
That.
That's okay. You're on record, you're on a video saying you voted against it.
Absolutely. Yeah, as
But
long
I
as
can-
that's clear, then.
I don't, what you're saying in your description that you just provided suggests that, okay, I'll give an example. The micro solid waste board
Mhm.
famously decided not to allow salvaging.
Right,
And
right.
I continued.
Famously with just you, Alice.
Right. No, there's a whole group out there. This is another issue. So, I mean, it's not like this is the law. You can't, what does it say? If we don't follow this, you get kicked off the select board. I mean, there's not a mechanism for you guys to kick me off the select board.
We can find,
But,
No.
but I continued to salvage at the transfer station after that. And I even went so far as to take pictures of the salvaged items on occasion and put them on Facebook.
See, I don't agree with that.
I'm
Sorry. I have the other board members comment that I don't agree with that. If I disagree, and I have on occasion with something we decided very strongly, that's the end of it. If somebody asks me if I would against,
yeah,
I go against it.
yeah.
I'm sorry, you get in, then you become one potential target for, an impetus for, you're gonna run a program to work against the decision of the board. That's what you're doing.
some of these issues are issues that are of like part of the core values of any individual select board member. So say
Sure.
we all vote against something like, you know, public safety related or something, and one member of our board is, you know, very actively involved in that area and writes things about it and is involved in, you know, advocating for better policies on, you know, all of these things. We don't then ask them to stop that
No.
just because.
You take off that hat when you enter the board and sit in this chair. You don't. wear
Sure,
that
but you
hat.
can then go back out into the world.
You can go back out and do whatever activity you're in, unless the board considers a conflict of interest, which is not. But no, I'm sorry, I'm not gonna belabor it. I'm totally against it. Other board members.
I'd just like to take away the word standby, because I think that's open to
really
a lot of
don't.
interpretation, and
I really don't want to get, this is a nit. Take it out. It's not worth the argument. It's not worth the time.
I think it's a I think, yeah, I don't disagree removing that word. I think there's the difficulty is that we're board members and it's a collegial board.
Correct,
It's a one body.
correct,
It's not a collection of 5 opinions.
correct. We don't act as individuals.
We don't act as individuals when we vote on the board.
Right.
So, and at the same time, we preserve our individual
Mhm.
freedom of thinking, of whatever, you know, opinion we have. So I think it's a gray zone.
No question. No
But
question.
I
Generally
would,
have
I would
massive
completely,
problems
I would
with it.
completely support removing, you know, standby if you don't.
Which is the more important action? I mean, I think we can all agree that abiding by
Yeah, abiding by.
Well, I could say
is
that.
more important than standing by.
I
Some
don't,
are-
I don't know what the difference is.
Then it's redundant. if we don't-
That's what I said.
Okay, let's eliminate it.
If somebody,
Actually have to
if one of us goes awry, we're gonna talk about it amongst ourselves. That's
Yeah,
fine.
okay, I like it.
All right.
I mean, I think about it as things like if we all decide that we're not gonna, even though we have keys, we're not gonna enter.
You eliminated, that's not next.
You win.
You're
Take the win.
gonna lose this every if you don't. You won.
Next.
Is that hard for you to?
No. I just want to curious if you have any other comment.
Yeah, I do.
Right.
Can we delve into this select board issues log just a little bit more?
Sure, which one?
Well, I guess,
Section 3.
We run.
is that the only reference to it in that one?
To what?
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
section 3,
yeah.
paragraph H.
H,
I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, we obviously need a little bit better way of resolving the occasional disagreement about how to set agendas. And like, we've talked about this issues log in the past, like at least a year ago, more, like when Sophie got on the board.
Yep.
And then it didn't happen. I heard like different reports about like Bill Kelly squashed it for some reason or different things, but are we actually sort of agreeing to implement that? Or I think if for no other reason
Oh,
than
yeah.
to keep,
Oh, yeah.
like, I'm fine with it
Oh, yeah.
ultimately coming down to the chair and the,
I think you're absolutely right.
but to keep track of, for my own sake too, to like try to keep track of all the things that have come up.
Or in the queue,
Right.
By the way, I do that, and I think others, but we haven't used the quote of log. I have my own individual log, so when Tom or somebody calls me or Stephanie says, would you consider this, I put it on that log. Now that helps me to prioritize agenda, so what we can get on when or not. And so, but we don't have the log online implemented.
No, but I think we can all agree to use it. And one of the purposes of the log was when we table items, we don't have a mechanism to say, oh, what happened to this thing we tabled 6 months ago?
Right.
And that's basically the purpose of the log, is to say, well, wait a second, we tabled this. No.
It's an actions log.
It's an action log. We can call it whatever you want, but it was a way, a proposal I made that there's a central file where we can put
Well, I think
issues
we should. we need
make
to
sure
stick-
that nothing falls.
Agreed. I think we should stick to the idea that we've had when you have a request for one, just pop an email. Myself into Audra, say, I'd like this to be considered for agenda. We, Audra and I, should put that on the log, and the log is then available for everybody.
Okay.
I think the issue Bill Kelly had was that the 5 of us would
Yeah, that's the problem.
add to the
Yeah.
log, and that's a problem.
I
It's
never-
not there's nothing illegal
No,
about that.
no,
It's just,
no,
it
no.
becomes a public document. So
Well-
sometimes he likes to tell us that we have to be careful about email and this and that. And yes, of course, we have to be careful about it. But the fact that 5 of us can see something on that in and of itself isn't a violation. It would be a violation if we tried to keep that from the
Right.
public.
Right, I think we could put that on here, Audra, well, we have the procedure for submitting the request to us by Tuesday, the code day. And we will put those items on the log, so we have control, including table items.
And table items.
Yeah, but that's
Yeah.
our,
The two of you
that's our
control the
Well,
log.
I do think it would be really good for us to, I mean, if there's concern with everybody being able to edit it, we can fix that so that
That's
it's
very
viewable by everyone.
Yep.
But I do think it would be good if every request for an agenda item goes onto that log. Just because everyone, I mean, because then, when Bob, people get frustrated because they told Bob and he hasn't put it on. He can go back to it and say, well, look, I had like 8 other things and that's why I didn't put it on for this meeting, but I kicked it back to the next one. So
or,
I just think it helps everybody understand where everyone is coming from. And likewise, like Allison, Tom, Sophie, Stephanie, you can say, well, yeah, but I gave you that item like 2 months ago and still.
Or sometimes it might be that Bob just talked to everybody else and there was only one,
That's correct.
sometimes it might be
that's correct.
Allison wanted this thing on and everybody else.
Right, anyway, like, the
I mean, I
point
know
being
that
that
might-
it's just, it
I
would
have
be
no
easier for
problem.
everybody to communicate.
If everybody prefers to put it on the log, I have no problem with that. But just know, just because you're putting it on there, it may not find up an agenda. It's rare, but it does happen.
And then that log becomes a public record, so it's on the town website.
Everything. we do.
No.
Well, no.
It really should, I mean,
No.
there has
No, you gotta be careful of that because if
That's too much
somebody,
sausage making probably.
yeah.
I agree,
Oh, yeah.
but what, so, okay.
It's a
so
tool for us. It's a tool for
Yeah.
the board to
So do we
manage.
have to
it.
create?
No, it exists.
we have
It's
one.
done.
Oh, it exists?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we just have to use it.
We just have to use it. We're just.
Yeah, I
I've
don't-
heard of this.
like I said-
over the years.
But to Allison,
Hi, my second year. It's
Yeah,
finally
we
seen
can-
this kind of.
if you want to,
See, Sophie, every idea has its season.
Yeah.
if you want to put items that way, but I would still prefer if you would notify me in parallel, if you can, I'd appreciate it. But if you don't, put it on the log, it's fine. But, and then if it's a communication about not being able to be in the agenda for some reason, we'll let you know.
But we're not gonna have it accessible.
No, you can read it.
Right, to
You can-
just read it, but we're not gonna add to it.
I think Audra was advocating that, no?
Well, I mean, if that's the concern that Bill Kelly had. then
Oh,
we
I
can-
don't, I think it's more logistics. I think it's better, more organized if the chair sees a request. And Audra saying, no, I'm not putting it on the log to go talk to Sophie and tell her the reason why we're not putting it in the log. I don't think it's gonna happen very much.
So not putting on the log or not putting on the agenda?
No, well, the agenda, to your point, TJ, no, we're probably putting it on the log. We'll put it on the log. I would prefer if we put it on the log, but
Yeah,
I think too many
it's
crooks,
good
too many crooks is gonna make a mess of it.
And also, like, we're less likely to forget something.
Okay, so the process is that we send an email to Audra and Bob with a request to add something to the agenda.
Correct.
And Audra and Bob are responsible for putting that in
On
the
the
issues
log, and the
log.
log is available for all
And
of you for review.
Other four of us are able to read,
Okay,
So
we're
where,
able to read the log, but we're not editors.
so where is that log for us? Where is the access?
I will send everybody through a link, so you have that document.
But let
Because
me
it's-
make the correction
Yes, yeah,
on the editors and
okay,
on the classification.
yes.
okay.
What about like, if there are things that we want updates on, but not necessarily needing to be an agenda item, but just maybe something that you could decide, like it would be something you would include in a manager's report or
Yeah.
something like that, like not all.
I mean, let's still put all of that on the log, because that's helpful to
Is it checklist?
us in setting the agenda,
Like a
because we
checklist.
kind of talk through these sometimes and say, okay, well, that warrants an agenda item. That doesn't, so I'll put it in my manager's
Yeah,
report.
I don't care what you put on. I mean, the log was for items to go on agenda. That was his.
And table, and table, because I
But-
noticed that we
but-
tabled stuff and we never untable them.
Don't know any of those are happening, but to that, yeah, I don't, yes, any item that's gonna potentially go on an agenda should go on there. We'll put it on based on input from y'all if you wanna request something. Just do it with a simple email. Right, anything else?
Yeah, I don't see that there's anything in here that addresses the issue of, I think you and I talked about this a little bit, Bob, about like when somebody writes to the select board,
Yeah, oh, no, it's in here.
is it?
Yeah, this is about communication. I wish I saw it there.
So what, so for everybody else,
Well,
like
no,
if
actually-
somebody writes to the select board and
who
the
answers?
town manager, like asking for
I thought, did we get?
an explanation of something or something that's going on.
We had 2 or 3 items that we were going to discuss just generally with the board, not on this document. But Audra, did we have something in there about communication like that? I thought we did. On hearings. Let me just take a quick
I
look.
don't actually.
I don't think we did either. That's an excellent question, because we did discuss it.
Because it gets tough sometimes, especially when it's about a board meeting, like a
Yes,
decision was made at a board meeting that already happened.
yes,
And so, you know, an explanation, you know, somebody asking for an explanation of why we voted the way we did, or, you know, that sometimes I feel like maybe I, you know, especially if there was differing votes, it's like, do I want to task Bob with responding for, you know, this is why we voted this way? I don't know always that I do want that. So sometimes I will respond to those myself.
which can be dangerous.
But you know, what constitutes the full? And I feel like sometimes it also happens that if we get something that's sent to a bunch of people,
Yeah.
then it kind of, it's not clear whose responsibility it is to respond.
It's very subjective because they could be writing about anything, you know, they could just be complaining to us or making a comment, and it may be operational. It may be fuzzy, maybe between select board and operational. But there is absolute danger of individuals responding to the person who said it, because none of the rest of us know. None of us, we all know we don't speak for the board, we can have individual comments. If you were providing some simple information, like that can be found on the website, that's no big deal. But if we say, you know, I agree, I'm exaggerating. If I agree with you, and I think, oh, well, if I did the same thing, or Sophie did the same individual, we just voted on it.
Yeah, I think there needs to be, I agree, and I think there needs to be I basically, so when I joined the board, when I started receiving those emails, the first thing I did was call Bob and say, what do we do with these? So do I answer? So that was my first go-to, but it might be useful to, sometimes one of us can be assigned to answer, but that needs to be your decision. We can't, I think it's really hard because we can get into so much trouble answering everything, everyone.
Well, I
all
think
together.
Audrey made a good point to me once about the fact that sometimes she can answer it well because she has some of the information that we don't have.
Yeah.
So it could be a myriad of, yeah, to what Sophie's pointing out, but I think the individual response as a select board member is dangerous.
Well, I mean, I think the bigger problem is usually that somebody
Two of
doesn't
us.
get a response at all. I don't think
I
the
agree.
issue has been like everybody responding. I'm not gonna like, I'm not willing to just not respond because, so I usually, but I make a point always of saying, I'm not speaking for the board. This is just, my opinion. But I do think we need to have something, maybe a set. I think it also becomes uncomfortable for Audra or Mus sometimes when the question is a mixture of, process and why did the board do this?
Right, because I've received a few of these lately when it's sort of
Yeah.
sent to all of us.
Yeah,
And there's process questions that I can answer, or certain questions more about the functioning of the organization that I can answer, but then they're intermixed with, and then why did the board make this decision? And I can't
No, you can't.
answer on behalf of the board because.
We can't even
Well,
answer.
I
No,
can't-
because
can't
all of
answer
you
either.
might make decisions for very,
Exactly.
the same decisions for very different reasons.
Right, exactly. And I think part of what you said is very dangerous. You say, I can tell you whether I agree or not, is what I heard. Maybe you weren't saying that, but that's what I heard. And that's dangerous because they're now polling individual board members for their position. And we shouldn't be doing that, in my opinion, at all. The only place we do that is in select board meeting.
I think we should have a wide discretion here. I mean, if somebody wants to talk to me about a certain issue in town, I should be, and any member of the board should be allowed to talk to that person about that issue. That's part of our job.
I think you pick up the phone and call, yes. I think in writing, no.
Oh, well, I mean, I'm more concerned about this leading to somebody getting no response.
Yeah.
That
So
can
I
agree.
think if we could say, to have, it should either, because we said here in another place, the chair is the official spokesperson of the board, which is, is tough sometimes. I think a lot of the time that works.
Sometimes does.
You
But
know,
I think your question, Allison, is how does the board know that a response was made unless everybody's copied? And I think maybe there's an idea is to say, I discussed this with Audra and this is what we're going to respond and how we're going to do it. And by the way, that may mean Allison's going to respond. I mean,
Yeah.
that may be individual, but you get into this thing about emailing back and forth your opinions. You haven't listened to all the data. How can you make a decision to be and look independent to the rest of the electorate?
me, if I respond to somebody about like the river water quality testing, about why I voted a certain way, or, I mean, you're never gonna convince me that I can't respond to that individually. But I do think we need to be we all need to always be careful in saying that we're only speaking for ourselves. But if Audra were to respond with, as per our blah, blah, blah policy, this came to the board
That's
because of blah, blah, blah.
That's
For, if you want to understand, the perspective of any individual board member and why they voted the way they did, you're gonna have to contact
Then
them.
how-
But because going back, it's very hard, especially on these issues where we have to go back to say, I don't know, I think there
Which
needs-
item number, which
But this-
item
but
letter?
there
number are we-
is, basically, it's just an issue that comes up.
Yeah,
so
I don't
much.
think we need to discuss it. If it's not on here and we
It's
haven't
on there,
agreed
it's
to it
on
here,
Oh, it's not on there. It's not on
then
there.
it's not.
It was something that we were
All-
told
all I
was
will
gonna
say
be
is
addressed in this
when-
document.
When
Right.
somebody responds to an email, I don't know what was said, and I get a phone call, I'm gonna hang up. Because I don't know what's going on in communication from you all to this individual, I have no idea. I saw an email recently, one person said, I heard from Tom and I heard from Allison, but I didn't hear from the rest of the board. I don't have any idea what you guys said. I have no idea.
I think you're talking about John McCluskey.
I don't care who it is, not the point. The point is, I don't know, and I trust you, by the way, I know you did. It didn't say anything that was awry, but I'm not gonna get caught in the crossfire when I run into the street. And he says, Tom told me that he absolutely agrees, and you're all crazy.
I said, this has always been confusing to me too. It would be good to get to the bottom of it.
I asked him to clarify.
It's
what
not
he
the
was
point. The
asking.
point is communication chain. If we want to just be willy-nilly, be willy-nilly, I don't care. I'm telling you, it leads to trouble.
I think
We're
if-
trying to get it so that everybody would get at least a response.
Any legislative body is gonna, if I email Vicky Dudera, I don't expect her to get permission from the Speaker of the House to reply to me.
Exactly.
Yeah, like
Oh,
she-
no, I think it's very straightforward when somebody emails like an individual.
Yeah.
I think that's really straightforward because obviously they're emailing you specifically because they want to know,
So-
what do you think about this, or can you help me with this?
So we're intending to respond to that email, for example,
It's-
how do we know? this
It's
is-
more when they send it to the
To
entire
all of us.
select board and to me.
Yeah,
How do we deal with those?
That's what I'm doing.
yeah. I think it's a very different situation.
It is,
Right.
it's very different. To me, it's very different.
I guess
mean,
what I'm saying is I
think if
don't always
they're
like the way it
sending to you
goes.
guys individually, you all have to respond as you see fit, because that's part of your job.
Individually.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, when somebody sends you an email and say, why did
No,
you?
I agree, but I'm talking about the five.
Yeah, yeah.
When we get to the
But
select
so-
board
so-
distribution.
Right, but we're getting down to two different cases.
Okay.
So when we're contacted individually, we
That's
can answer,
fine.
that's different.
That's fine.
But when we receive an email addressed to the distributionist of the select board
Mhm.
and Audra, I think there needs to be coordination of the response, because we cannot be all five of us
That's
answering.
that's
that
the only thing I'm
question.
talking about is
Yeah.
that
I
situation.
think
That's-
it would be great if all five of us actually did respond. How often does that happen?
I don't think it would be great at all.
Ever.
I think there should be an official response, and I think that in some cases, like there's some cases where I feel compelled to respond to that person individually, and I'm going to do that. But that shouldn't take the place ever of, just, the official response from somebody, and I don't know whether that's the town manager or the chair
Mhm.
that says, your email was received
Mhm.
and blah, 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 some kind of like,
Okay, so I'll just throw out a suggestion.
Mhm.
Do we want to include like a correspondence item on the agenda for any whole of board?
I don't think so.
Now you're getting into
No, that
answering
doesn't-
emails online, no, I think.
No, I'm not saying you answer them in the meeting, I'm saying you delegate someone in the meeting.
Just to-
And then if it doesn't.
No, you get 10 emails, we're gonna be talking about 10 emails during, no, just either state where we are or set up a
So that's
procedure. No,
suggestions.
I'm trying to think of a suggestion too. The other one I thought of was, well, maybe Audrey, you and I should say, y'all shouldn't respond to this, we will, just so you know, or we're not responding to this for the following reasons.
once in a while, you have sent us things that say, if
Exactly.
so-and-so should contact you, please be aware that
Yes,
we're
yes.
engaged in litigation and it would,
So would that be acceptable for
Yeah,
us to say, either we are or we're not
It's like a
responding?
case by case basis.
Yeah,
Yeah, but
It's fine.
But before we answer, we give Bob and Audra a chance to tell us,
yeah, more than 5 minutes, yeah.
like, either we're gonna answer or delegated, like,
Yeah.
Allison's gonna answer.
Yeah,
So we all are on the same page and we don't
Yeah.
cross our wires.
I agree. Should we add that in here, Audra?
I was gonna add in a section for communication.
Yeah.
Have it be the new section 10 and then
That's good. Any
section
other
10 become 11.
We'll get to some general stuff that's been around time pretty quick.
Yeah, I mean, just to wrap that up, I'm gonna push back strong on anything like that. I'm gonna use specific examples. When John emailed, I said, could you clarify? I didn't understand what he was talking about. I just wanted to have a broader
Yeah,
perspective. When the ladies over on Gold Street emailed, I said,
Yeah.
I would recommend you make a petition in your neighborhood and bring it and try and get it before the board.
But that was only to you.
No,
It was only
You
to
weren't
you.
on that, you weren't on the
Ah,
Gold Street,
yeah,
you were
I
on
know.
McCluskey's though.
No,
You weren't on John McCluskey's?
no.
Oh, okay.
No, that's one of the problems, it isn't always consistent.
Okay, sure.
So
Well,
these are the-
anyway,
the two
like
things-
I'm gonna push back on anything where like, I'm not gonna say I strongly agree with you and I'm gonna necessarily, but I'm gonna reserve the right to say, maybe you should, email Audra. Or whatever.
This is
I want
Parks and
that.
Rec.
That's why we were elected.
Right,
I-
we're
in my
gonna be, yeah, I agree. We're gonna be wrong occasionally, but we can give, I don't know.
We're
Yeah,
we're gonna write, if it's the 5 of us and Audra, Audra and I will let you know how we should respond.
But
And if you want to talk to somebody.
if we wanna, respond, if any individual wants to respond
Yeah,
also.
If I get an email, I'm gonna assume they're directing the email to me. I'm not
Again, I-
necessarily gonna look at the distribution.
I just be on record, I disagree with that. I think it breeds nothing but trouble.
Yeah.
But right now, what we're gonna do is, to the 5 of us and Audra only, we'll just put our heads together and say, oh, Audra's gonna respond on this. And if you wanna talk to somebody in your own, who's gonna stop the guys and say, "We're gonna shoot you." But I'd be very careful what you put in writing versus just doing it on the phone.
Well,
Yeah,
that seems
definitely.
like a strange
I agree.
thing. What's the difference really? I mean,
But there's
Oh,
I write every response that I give on
well,
email. I mean, I actually kind of enjoy that. Like, I'm writing this, the idea is that we're right, anything that we say, we can defend and that we think about. And honestly, you know, our phone
Again,
conversations could be forward too, if there were a mechanism for that.
If you say
And we
that-
really should be thinking about what we say on like that
if you,
the
if
same
somebody's
way.
recording a phone, you should assume they're recording your phone call.
Mhm.
It's the same thing, I agree. Especially, this gets especially ticklish when you get at the area of automation where we're involved in some kind of litigation that can be used in discovery.
I mean,
But
I
anyway,
actually do better sometimes writing things out when I can
We're
think about
beating
them.
the hell out of this one. Are there any other comments on this item?
I've got one I would
Go
like
ahead.
to revisit, because I don't know if all of you
Right,
looked closely at it, and I just want to make sure you're okay with it.
Which one?
That is in section 3 under meetings.
three,
Yep, and it's in I.
we should have Jimmy, and,
I know, the second paragraph,
Yeah.
it should have been J, but I
Oh,
missed the
oh.
lettering. It says the first regular meeting of the month shall be for discussion items.
Oh,
and
yeah, that's good.
presentation.
Oh, right.
It's a big change.
yeah, that's I thought we were gonna just discuss that one.
Yeah.
Because this is one we've gone back and forth with a couple of times. We do, other people have done this where you have specific things, like a good example was the EMS thing we had, that's a discussion, so
Yeah.
it's an update of sorts. Some people do, some entities do that as a separate meeting. Now, you're still gonna organize those to, fill a time slot. And then only in a select board meeting, whichever one it was, you would do action items, consent agenda, minutes, and those kind of things, but it would be devoid of, and maybe select board reports too, of course, but in the meeting, but discussion items of manager report, but any discussion items for adjournment would be held for the second meeting or the first meeting, whichever one we designate. It's an option, it's been done, it has its pros and cons. If you had, if you do a discussions when it has to be a program discussion, it's not an open, walk in the room and I want to ask, what the combination of the safe is in the town hall. It's gonna have to be planned, like EMS, that's good, one. Or the, what was it, we talked about the around the mountain trail thing, the.
Coastal Mountain
Yeah,
Trust
yeah,
or
have them give an update,
map
on those kind of- map burning and NOAA, and those could be programmed in a separate meeting. With instruction that, we're gonna still run it for the time slot where I try as best I can to run an agenda so that it fills a certain time slot. And it's been going okay. Sometimes we go over, most of the times we do, but it's usually because of public input and sometimes executive sessions. But that's an option, and that's the way it's written. And it's open for your all's input. We could try to do that. I would suggest we would do the discussions in the first meeting of the month
Mhm.
and do the business in the second, because we get, applications and stuff for licenses toward the end of the month. Yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say this will delay our response time. I mean, like, I like it, I think, or, I see the pros and cons, but if we're only really voting once a month, there's some delay in
Yeah.
response times for
I mean,
items
that's
that
a
might be
danger.
pressing.
That's a danger, and unfortunately, the people will come to organize and says, oops, we need this on the agenda next week, and then they're gonna morph into a discussion meeting with small little action items.
Yep.
That's a good point. That's my first thought, was exactly that.
So I'm a little concerned about the rigidity of that leading to unintended consequences. My hope would be that something like this was going to lead to more discussion items.
So I guess
So that's what I want, is more
Yeah.
opportunity to discuss things.
Well,
my thinking.
And
And if we have to
is-
ban discussion from other meetings in order to bring it into,
Yeah, you're right.
but I think there needs to be some flexibility in this, and I would rather not turn this into telling everybody that, oh, I'm sorry, we're not gonna vote on this because this is, select board discussion day. I think there has to be some, but
Well, then you're putting it back to where it was, and it's suggesting we don't change it. I'm here to suggest we don't change it.
no, that's not necessarily what I'm saying.
Well,
I
no.
want more discussion items, and if this is the best way to accomplish that, then
No, it doesn't, because both meetings are gonna be, just relatively speaking, the same duration as specified to the extent we can. And so we're not creating a clock, we're not creating time. I'm sorry, that's just not happening. If we want to create more discussion, I understand we have to be more crisp. Discussion about items on the, I'm sorry.
You have a strong feeling.
You walk right into that one.
But we're
because, you
just
know,
not discussing things enough. So maybe, do we need to stay longer? I don't know about ending our meetings at 9 all the time. If it feels like there are mechanisms being put in place to restrict the amount of discussion. I think it'd be better if we had more things like that
Yeah.
EMS thing the other day where we get to be informed about things a little bit. We get to, and it's not.
But there's a way, I mean, we could also format, I mean, there's some discussions that are really interesting, but we need to have a little bit better control over people who come with PowerPoints. I mean,
Yeah.
the main DOT presentation was excruciating.
I agree.
That's because
It was
that guy
excruciating.
was
So-
told it had to be only 15 minutes.
And
he's
it
trying to
lasted
squish-
45.
Yeah.
So,
I'm
no,
sorry.
no, but I mean, I
She's
think,
not talking about the duration, she's talking about content. I
and
agree.
we need to have, you know,
Sometimes
I
things
think,
are gonna be boring, but-
no, I think there's a way that we can structure when we have presentations, and I welcome presentations and discussions, but we can also ask the people who are presenting, you know, it's a 10-slide maximum presentation,
Or is it duration time?
or is 15 minutes.
agree.
Because it's really hard, not only for us, but for people on Zoom to stay engaged at 8:30 or 9 PM watching a PowerPoint. I mean, I'm sorry, that is not efficient.
Yeah, you think.
And
select
it doesn't
board
lead to a
shouldn't be
better
like-
conversation. Everybody just wants this PowerPoint thing to end. So I think we can structure it so that we can ask our guests to be, you know, mindful of the time. And if it's a 15-minute presentation, you rehearse a 15-minute presentation. I've been given, you know, 3, 5, 7, 8 minutes. It doesn't matter. You work on it. Because it's just not conducive to business to have endless PowerPoint.
Okay,
presentations.
we
So
haven't,
does that
there's
mean
really
we should
no.
mark for that.
I think we
or-
could have discussion at either meetings,
We have that.
but with a time bound, so that we can actually
Mhm.
get to the substantive material
Sorry,
people.
chairperson.
Believe me, what I'm looking for is very specific help and be able to manage meetings. And, you know, when I told the MDOT guy, you have 15 minutes for presentation, I still believe that was plenty.
Plenty of time.
It was plenty of time. It's just that and I have to be able, I was the one that told him that, and I would do it again.
Well, we
Because
have questions, and so a lot of the
But the
time,
questions
somebody
are
from the
fine.
public has questions,
Yes,
I
or I have a
I'm
question,
not-
and then we're just cutting people off, and we're just creating this environment of like, oh, we're in a hurry, and nobody can ask any questions, we have
No,
to go.
the questions have nothing to do with this, Alison. When we have guests coming, give them a 15-minute time slot. That's all you're gonna get from your PowerPoint presentation. And then there's a discussion after the
we can
presentation.
handle that.
But we cannot
That's
have
reality.
Yeah,
I mean, that's like
that's
the
how-
chair recognizes. We see it all over the
All
place.
the
In
time.
classrooms, you have 15 minutes.
Well,
Yes.
Go.
you know, I
But then we
love,
have to leave questions until the end, and not
Yeah,
let people
that's
ask
fine.
questions during, because that ends up eating up that person's
That's
time. So we
fine.
should be very clear that the questions have to be at the end, and then
Exactly.
it'll be clear to that person how much time they
And it
have.
also,
Yes,
it also
and-
has to be clear that the first round of questions belongs to the select board, because these people come to present to the select
us,
board,
right.
to us,
and then,
not to the public. And once we're done with our
Well, that's
questions,
fine.
we can open it up to the
well,
public.
and further to that, the presentation should be provided us to it in advance.
Yeah.
Not when you bring the thing in and throw it on the board. And I want to see it in advance, so I do my homework on the side. Some issues I can review real quickly, some take me a little bit longer. So that's also key, because the discussions across the board, yeah, there's a lot of things you can think may be of interest to people, but again, I come back to the point where I don't think a lot of people are listening intently to the board, and that may be our
Well, the
problem.
newspaper is, and they're trying to write articles, and they're having a really hard time. a lot of the time.
So, I mean, I think we're actually not disagreeing here. Allison wants to have a robust discussion.
We all want.
But there's a difference between that, Allison, and asking our guests or our presenters to limit their presentation to a certain amount of time.
That's not the main issue that I see at all, the limiting of time, that's fine, they can limit their presentation to a certain amount of time.
Okay.
That's fine.
Then we're not, yeah.
No, you said to me, NDOT only got 15 minutes to present.
I feel that there's a general bias going on there with the MDOT situation.
No,
and that
it's because the
intersection,
no,
and that
I'm
there's
sorry.
negativity about,
So I have to
No.
make decisions
Making things
based on
safer for
whether I think
pedestrians
somebody on the
is-
board thinks it's more important to
nothing-
them. But the 15-minute limitation, I advise to
I think
everybody.
that we weren't well prepared for that either, and that certainly could have gone better for many, many reasons, but But just continuously hearing that brought up as like a reason to not have discussion items, I'm just a little bit tired of it, but
I'm not saying it's a reason not to have discussion items. I think we can have better structured discussion items, and that we should stop having those presentations with a main DOT or someone else when they just come and for 20, 30, 40 minutes.
I think they expected a level of understanding of that issue that was higher than what it was, because it's an issue that's been talked about in this town for many, many years. And so,
Yeah, it's not
like,
done
we
that.
had we talked about in the Pathways Committee meeting and stuff. And so for people that have already been thinking about this, yeah, it wasn't the most perfect
No,
presentation.
but it's not the first time that we have,
It's been a number of times.
there's been a number of times when we have guests and they come and give presentations. And
EMS could have been-
I'm EMS included.
Don't these could have been.
It was
numbers.
super interesting. It was too long,
That was, well,
too long.
Are
I'm
we gonna
sorry.
put that in the bylaws, that
Yes.
we want it to
15
be
minutes.
15 minutes, is that what? we're
Well, I don't
talking
think,
about here?
I think that doesn't, I don't care if it's in the bylaws, but I need to know, because one of the things I need to know is if it's, do you first of all support the 9 and 9:30 kind of a general termination time? If you don't, fine, we'll go to midnight. I'll change the agenda, trust me,
I don't.
trust me. If you want me to go, just tell me, people, because I'm not gonna sit here and try to manage the goddamn thing. Well, some of the people think I'm being too much of a whip cracker and trying to manage the time.
No, I agree between 9 and 9:30. I'm perfectly
So on
happy with that.
2H, it does probably, section 3, sorry, under H,
Age.
that says 9 o'clock, it should have a PM beside it.
That's a good idea.
And
9 to 9:30.
I
That's either
feel
way.
like we need to put a
We're here all
PM
night.
there. And if we're gonna say like 9 to 9:30, maybe it should be,
That's fine. I mean,
you know.
Yeah,
You
but,
can't, you can't manage it to the hour. or
I mean, and it says that we can all vote to extend it.
yeah.
Right,
So,
But,
That's
but I
fine.
think constraining guest presentation to 15 minutes, let's give it a shot.
Mhm.
That's,
I mean, that-
it's much better to have
Well,
shorter
also-
presentations.
also
if we,
provided
as long as it leads to
15
more of
minutes.
them,
And one thing, this is an idea, maybe in the agenda, which, gets published before the meeting, we could say it's a 15-minute presentation. And if someone has a strong feeling and says, boy, this might take 20, especially if we have a preview of
Tom,
that
I
packet.
did that once in an agenda and I was gonna hit cut off.
you know, when
Well,
we had
because-
the brown tail moth presentation a few years back,
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, no, that was the one I was gonna pick out as the worst one that I've ever seen.
I mean,
That was like the MDOT presentation was efficient compared to that one.
yeah,
Thank you, Stephanie, for remembering
because
that.
I came to that one, because I live on Oak Hill.
Oh.
I get so embarrassed
I guess the question is,
for the state entomologist inviting me.
and some people were just eating up every word, but yeah. it
we
was-
don't
No,
have,
it was because we invited
But
a
it
state
doesn't have to
entomologist.
be in here.
No, it
can
does not
just
have to be in here.
a-
this
The
is just,
recommendation.
Yeah.
we'll just assume we're gonna recommend, ask the persons who are presenting to limit your presentation to 15 minutes. And that, and provide the presentation in advance, so it's in our packet.
But it's
And
not
structure it
gonna
in a
be-
way that questions come at the
And
end.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
rather
I
than,
see.
J.
I
because
see.
a lot of the
I
time they'll say,
see.
stop me if you have a question or whatever, and we should just commit to, for the most part, waiting until making a list
Yes,
ourselves and
yes,
waiting until the end for
I'm
questions, because
glad you said that, because I'm bad at that.
I think that's what happens to me a lot.
We
of
meet
times.
at the
Me too.
house and when the guy in EMS was talking, asking for clarity, keep your mouth shut, take a note. And just ask the questions at the end. I agree with that. That's very strong. That'll make us much more efficient.
And I would also encourage us to repeat this process at the meeting, saying, we're gonna have a 15-minute presentation. The first set of questions belongs to this, will be done by the select board, then it'll be open to the public. And also let's try, one of the things other town meetings do is limit the intervention of the public to one intervention, not 3 times. The same person comes back with a different question.
Well, we tried to address it even to the board about how many times you go through the same topic, and it's written kind of loosely in here, as I recall.
Yeah,
It basically says ask questions and then get a rebuttal kind of thing, because a lot of meeting formats, they say, okay, Tom, make a comment, and Alice and me, blah, blah. And then somebody explains or asks questions, then you have one chance to rebuttal. That's it. There's no more after that, because otherwise it goes, we get into, our action items on average take 15 to 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And then you start doing, 4 or 5 action items, you're over an hour and 15 minutes. And then you start discussions with no real limitation. But I think these are very good for me, to help me give guidelines on how you want to see these presentations. And I think the packet has to have it, and I love the idea of the questions after the fact.
Okay, Stephanie had a few comments, I think, Bob.
Yeah,
Sorry.
just, so on 6.3G,
Bingo.
just saying, where is it? Is it
Six.
Six, there's no three.
Okay, hold on. Is that-
Section
Six.
Decisions, section 6, decisions.
Well, just to close, it sounds like, Roger, the presentations, I'm sorry, discussions and the action item separation is not a good idea. We'll stay with the format we have
Yeah.
now and try to get in more discussions by being more efficient.
Yeah,
What a
So
compromise.
Jake's gone.
See,
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I just wanted to point out, Sophie, you had asked to have at the beginning on page 3, I'm sorry, changes in the order of business are at, I got
Typo?
typoed at the top. I think you already had that, but I just wanted to.
Oh, yeah.
To hear
Okay.
that.
Oh,
yeah,
And then on
Oh, yeah.
7E
70,
must be page 7.
oh. I don't know,
Section 7?
Hold on,
Page 7.
page 7,
Oh, page 7.
4E,
Yeah,
B made just needs to have a space there.
oh, yeah.
And then I just want to have a discussion. I'm not really sure how I feel about it, so I
Mhm.
just wanted to bring it up.
Mhm.
First time I read it and then just sitting here reading it. Under page 6, 3G,
3G.
that's what I was, there we go.
no attempt to convince fellow board members.
Yeah, I don't know how I feel about that. I
Yeah.
just, I feel like that's not,
So I
gives me
Mm.
feelings.
so technically, we're not supposed to convince each other of anything.
Right.
what?
No, we're not. We're supposed to
I missed
offer
this.
offer information and clarification, but we're not supposed to try to convince anyone of our
Yeah.
position.
It's a real gray zone, because if somebody asks me, and you do, what do you think about this one? I will give the facts that I believe, that's the end of it. You know, I don't, well, I don't sit there and say, I don't, then I ask the other person, what's your opinion? I don't debate the merits, you decide.
The point is to avoid having horse trading, saying, I'll support your motion on Tuesday to do X, but when I'm gonna come up with
That's
this,
the function.
It doesn't say that. There's a difference between trying to
Yeah,
convince
but
somebody
convince-
and trading votes
but that's what,
for things you don't believe in. Like, I don't
would-
think that's what it's saying
It
here.
wouldn't break my heart if it wasn't there.
okay,
I just feel like it's too much of something going on there that, I think it's just too
Do you
pinpointed.
guys agree?
I can't tell what the underlying, like,
I think, so,
the point is that
let's say that we got together and we discussed parking meters.
we did.
Yes, yeah.
oh, now it's coming out.
The real thing, yes. That is just a discussion, well, why do you feel that way?
Exactly.
That,
But
I
I give
suppose
you-
that could be construed
It
one
can
way or
be,
the
it
other.
can
Not-
be, it can
But
be.
I find it informative.
Exactly.
And that's
And
why,
that's all it should be. It should
That's
be
right.
informative. It should not be, Tom, you really
I
need to
mean,
come by, you know, and
legally, that's correct, but you know, why raise the red flag?
That's all I'm saying.
There's a
But
difference
even if you-
between trying to convince and coercion. I mean, I think
No,
we
but
don't
you
want
can convince
coercion. we
If
don't
you
want-
say to me, I feel strongly this way, you're not, to me, that's not trying to convince me.
I
Well,
will never
if-
say
But if I
that.
have a rock band in
But you
front of the
could say
house,
it.
if I have a rock band at 1 o'clock in the morning in front of the house, blaring music until you change your vote, that's coercion.
Correct.
Be my first.
Yeah.
vote.
And we're not
trying to
Change
convince.
convince to coerce,
coerced.
Let's take it out. Okay.
Oh, let's take it out.
Let's take it out.
take the whole thing out.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, we're running.
I mean,
out
I'm
of
gonna
time
try to
here.
convince you guys of things from time to time. I mean, that's just.
Yeah, there is one thing I want to bring up, and Bob, I've discussed this with you.
Yeah.
One thing that I've seen that I feel like we could do better is when people make public comments.
Yeah.
It should be, it doesn't matter if they're making the best point in the world. It could be something we all agree with and it's a no-brainer. It should be public comments there. The chair recognizes for 3 minutes Bang, and there should be no comment.
Done.
Agreed.
And if we all agree with it, then the next day we should all email Bob and say, Bob, that should be on the agenda next meeting. We shouldn't open that up for discussion ever. It doesn't even matter, it doesn't matter what the topic is.
Agreed.
Thank you. for bringing that
Can we
up.
provide a,
No.
like,
Nothing.
Hmm.
No, I
He's really
completely
going-
agree
we
with
don't
Tom.
even know what I'm gonna say.
Because you're entering into a gray zone. of what we can
You're saying
record.
but.
It's something-
No, you have literally no idea what I'm about to say right now. So- And by we, I mean you. Or Audrey, or whoever you choose. But could we provide a softer explanation to the person so that they can understand the very awkward experience that they're having?
I do that in front of
I
every meeting.
Don't think it's quite
Including the last one, maybe it wasn't clear. When
at
I
the
s-
beginning, before they
I
they
did,
speak.
when
You say that
Bob was
every time.
walking up, I said, just so you know, you have 3 minutes and the board will not respond to any questions or answers. What's the first thing he did? He asked a question. He said, that's my question.
Yeah, well,
I'm sorry, didn't.
but so I'm saying that the explanation isn't quite good enough.
All right, make it better.
That it could say, that we could come up with some language to
Why don't
say,
we put it up on the,
No, it should be on the
Screen.
agenda. No, it should be on the agenda. On the agenda of every meeting.
Oh,
we should
in
say,
the public
In
comment.
the
item.
public
yeah,
comments,
an explanation.
The select board
Remember,
will not respond to any
will not
questions
respond to
during
any
public
questions.
comment.
And
or
maybe
we put it up on
why,
the big
because-
screen. Put it up there that says the board will not respond to public comments, and that's like in huge
And
letters
we
while they're
cannot.
standing there. Cannot.
No, we
well, we
can't.
can't, there's no law, but we've
No.
agreed not to because it's
Right.
better if
That's
just some
right.
language that says why we're doing this, because it's very
Well,
difficult for people to understand.
Well,
Because
I
sometimes
also
they
explained
get
that in a
responses,
couple of
sometimes
meetings
they
when I
don't.
told people, the
Exactly.
reason why we do this is because the board has to receive information that's packaged.
That's
in
not the only
deliberation
reason,
order.
Stephanie, they come and they say, they're like really disjointed by it, even when, if you're 100% of the time
Yeah.
stone cold to these people, they still sometimes are gonna be like confused.
It's easier for me to stand behind it
Oh, yeah, I agree with
when
you.
people come up to me and say, well, last week, so-and-so got a great explanation from Audra
Yeah,
and whoever about this, but I got shut down.
yeah,
And I feel like it was a little rude.
discrimination.
And
Well, I
told to
don't
go sit
really
down.
necessarily think the solution is just to be rude to everybody. I think
It's not being.
we live in a
rude.
small town where sometimes you can say, oh, by the way, that's actually the Rotary Club that does that. And,
If
you know, is
give
it really gonna kill us to just say,
it-
you might wanna join the Rotary Club if you're concerned about pancake breakfast? Like,
I think once you open the door to saying anything, it gets fuzzy and who's responding. You're right. I can do it. If I don't respond, I'm sorry, that's not part of this
It
meeting.
just has
Period.
to be.
It has to be crisp. And I think that's the consensus I'm hearing.
this is an example where I will disagree, but I will comply.
No, you will abide. You will
I will abide, I
abide.
hope to not have to stand by it.
I agree. I
It's-
completely
it's-
support it.
There are occasions, and Audrey's done it, when the person said, yeah, Audrey says, just send an email to Joe.
Yeah.
And that, well, okay, I'm not gonna look at that. But if then they get up here, like, the last one was extremely, not the first time, it's about the 15th time, when somebody gets up and I've said every meeting, we're not gonna answer questions, we're not prepared to answer questions, so please make your comments, 3 minutes. And they get up and say, that's my question.
I know, but you say it in a way like you're scolding them, like they've tried to do this every single meeting.
They do.
And I
do.
It's, but it's different people, these poor people, like, we
They're
could just
not
be a
poor
little
people.
nicer to them.
What are they, deaf?
I just think we put it up on the board. It says it big letters.
Yeah, we
The
put
board
it.
cannot.
They've made
cannot
a law,
respond.
they're not doing it to be mean, they believe it's for the best,
Yeah, I get, we could just put on the agenda.
except for Alice.
There's no, the board will not respond to any, or town manager. No, you don't have to put town manager, the board will not
Allison, I
respond,
agree with you.
will
This
not
is what
respond to any
I-
questions or comments during this agenda.
And I'll
I
follow
would
this.
love
All right.
to be able to
Without, we're running out, we're running out of time,
I would.
and we didn't discuss the priorities
We'll hold
thing.
our own meetings.
We can do that.
But we have to be consistent, that's all I'm.
Yeah. We did have on this agenda to talk, we will correct this thing, send it out for review, final review by the board, and then we'll get it to an agenda for approval. If you have any changes between now and then, we can do it or talk about it. But we did have this thing about, that Roger did take the priorities list and put some meat on the bone for our time. And if you have any comments on that, I think you should send them directly to Audra. Any comments on the format or inclusion or exclusion?
I'm gonna make my comments on Facebook.
I don't-
I'm just,
You should put it in your opinion.
my column.
I was gonna
my column
say,
this
that's
week.
not a column, that's a tone.
Is this okay, guys? What I'm doing,
I opened up the newspaper and the whole. thing was
Select
awesome.
board bylaws, my real thoughts.
I love the one on jury duty, by the way. But anyway, so, well, but please comment to Audra on that. I think a heck of a lot. What Audra's obviously trying to do, and we all agree, is take these priorities and put them into something that her directors can understand and continue to work on or not.
Yeah, I think what I'm gonna do is, like, as a next step, we're updating work plans, so we'll just come back with work plans and see what
Yeah.
those look like.
For the department?
Yeah.
Oh,
That'd be great.
Yeah.
Awesome.
it's like gonna go in the newsletter too.
It can also go on the Facebook.
So with that, I
Okay.
will call for motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Do we have a second? Is there a second? All those in favor? Hey, it's 5-0. Do you want me to cut off this?
Oh, no,
You have to.
I will.